This is the part where some men mess up. When she says no, they think it's a challenge. They believe trying again will change her mind. Listen, you don't got to keep trying, for God's sake. Some women might play the whole hard-to-get game. But here's the truth. No matter how fly you are, how sharp you dress, how good you smell, or how handsome you think you look, you need to be ready for rejection. Because no really does mean no. Rejection is part of life, and you must accept it and move on. This story is about a man who couldn't handle that reality, and instead of walking away, he took a soul who also happened to be a mother. Hi everyone, welcome back to True Crime Family Stories channel. I hope you're doing well. Today's case is one of those stories that stays with you. It's frustrating, it's heartbreaking, and it makes you angry at how unnecessary it all was. We are talking about 23-year-old Camila Pakasi Zanga, a young woman who should still be here raising her son, laughing with her friends, and building her future. Instead, her life was stolen because someone refused to accept the word no. I first learned about this case through social media, and when I first saw it trending, I thought it was happening in Florida with the way people were talking about it. Nope, this story happened in Bolivia, which, let me tell you, feels like a world away from places like Texas or California. But the truth is, the fear women feel walking home at night isn't different whether it's La Paz, New York, or Los Angeles. Camila was not just a name on a headline. She was a daughter, a friend, and most importantly, a mother. Her son is only 5 years old. He still asks about her. He doesn't understand why she isn't coming home. That gap in his life will never close, and it's all because one man's pride was more important to him than her life. What shocked me most was that her murder wasn't hidden. It was filmed. Not only filmed, but shared online. And I need to warn you here, do not go searching for that video. It is graphic, it is horrifying, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I wish I hadn't. Beyond the horror of that recording, Camila's story forces us to face something bigger. The danger of harassment and obsession. The way entitlement turns deadly when boundaries are ignored. Too many women are forced into these situations. Too often it ends with violence. The case itself is straightforward. There are not layers of mystery or complicated details, but the impact, that runs deep. Her absence is permanent. Her son will grow up without his mother, and her family and friends are left carrying a loss that never should have happened. That is why I am telling Camila's story today. Because it matters. Because her life mattered. And because stories like hers remind us how much damage a single word ignored can cause. Thank you for being here with me and giving your time to listen. If you are new here, I would love for you to join our community by subscribing. And with that, let's get into today's video. Camila Pakasi Zanga was born in 2001 in the Mosatine indigenous village of Covento. There is not a lot of detail about her childhood, her family routines, or what her early years looked like, but we do know she grew up with a sister named Metzli. From what we can see, Camila loved simple joys. She played chess. She loved sharing herself on social media, posting selfies, videos, and joining in on funny trends. Her TikTok page is still filled with dancing clips and playful sounds. Watching those videos, you get a sense of her energy, her beauty, and how full of life she was. As she grew older, Camila started shaping her ambitions. At one point, she considered dentistry. She also thought about politics. But in the end, she followed in her mother's footsteps and chose education. That decision meant leaving her home and enrolling in a school nearly 4 hours away from her village. That choice came with sacrifice. She had to leave behind her family and, most painfully, her 5-year-old son. She was a single mother, and the boy's father was not in the picture. Thankfully, Camila had her mother, Salome, who stepped in to care for her grandson while Camila studied during the week. Salome later shared how much her daughter gave up to pursue this dream. Camila balanced the demands of school, long trips home, and her own well-being. She often left in the middle of the night or before dawn to make it back in time for class, traveling alone on risky roads. But she did it anyway. Everything was for her son. She wanted to secure a better life for him, even if it meant pushing herself to exhaustion. On social media, Camila sometimes reflected on that struggle. She reshared posts about how hard it is to study far away from your family, posts about wanting to quit and go home, but then remembering why you left in the first place. She wrote about the loneliness of living in a place where nobody checks in on you, where making friends feels impossible, where partying and drinking lose all meaning. She reminded herself that her family's sacrifice gave her the chance to be there at all, and she refused to waste it. Those words reveal who she was, a young woman who carried heavy burdens but never stopped thinking about her son's future. Even when it was hard, even when it was lonely, she pressed forward because she believed in something bigger than herself. One of the most difficult challenges Camila faced during her studies was a classmate who made her life unbearable. His name was Edwin Marcos K. Wango, 24 years old. From her very first year at school, she told her mother that something about him made her uncomfortable. By her fourth and final year, the problem had only grown worse. Camila described Edwin as aggressive. He constantly tried to get close to her, always pressing for attention, always pushing for a relationship she did not want. When they had to work together on projects, she hated it. He would grab her arm roughly, shove her, or make her feel small in front of others. His aggression wasn't only aimed at her. Even a teacher once found himself on the receiving end. Edwin had a reputation. He rarely spoke to anyone, kept to himself with his headphones in, and never seemed interested in being part of the group. But one day in class, when a teacher told him to remove his earbuds and focus, Edwin snapped. To everyone's shock, he stood up and punched the teacher in the face. The school reported the incident and gave him some form of psychological help, but it was brief and ineffective. There were no lasting consequences. He stayed enrolled and nothing really changed. Camila never hid her feelings about him. She told classmates she didn't like him, and everyone noticed his fixation. They saw how antisocial he was, how much aggression he carried, and how focused he was on her. It was obvious to everyone that Edwin was obsessed. At one point, Camila even told her mother she wanted to drop out of school because she felt so uncomfortable around him. But she reminded herself why she was there. She was studying for her son, fighting for his future, and she wasn't going to let Edwin take that away. Back in her village, she already had a boyfriend, and she paid no attention to Edwin's advances. She made it clear in every possible way that she was not interested. He refused to accept that. Which brings us to October 15th, 2024. That morning, 23-year-old Camila woke up and went through her normal routine. She got dressed, made her breakfast, packed her things, and set out for class at the Simon Bolivar Higher School of Teacher Training. At 8 o'clock, she sat with her classmates in the middle of a lesson. Without warning, Edwin rose from his seat and charged toward her. He pulled out a knife and began stabbing her before she had any chance to react. Camila collapsed to the ground, but Edwin pinned himself over her body and continued driving the blade into her. The classroom erupted into chaos. Some students fled in panic, others screamed and pressed themselves against the walls. A few brave classmates rushed forward, grabbing whatever they could to fight him off. Desks, chairs, even a standing fan and a wooden crate. Anything to pull him away from her. But Edwin would not stop. He ignored every blow, every attempt to push him back. His focus never wavered. He kept stabbing Camila as if no one else was even there. I mentioned earlier that I came across the video of the attack, and it was horrifying. You can see the panic in that classroom. Students are shouting at Edwin, throwing anything they can reach, begging him to stop. And yet it is as if he isn't even there. He looks completely disconnected from reality, his focus locked only on Camila. Everyone already knew about his temper, and later many admitted they were terrified to get too close. Edwin was a large man with a weapon in his hand. Beyond those few who tried using desks and chairs, the rest of the class froze. Some cried, some screamed. They pleaded with him, "Please stop, calm down, sit down, let go of the knife." Eventually, Edwin stopped. He stood up from over Camila's body, still clutching the knife, until teachers grabbed hold of him and dragged him into an office to wait for the police. Meanwhile, Camila was carried out and rushed to the hospital. It was only 8 o'clock in the morning, a normal day that had barely begun. Moments before, these students were opening notebooks, preparing for another lesson. Now they were standing in shock, having just witnessed one of their classmates stab another to death in front of them. At the hospital, doctors tried, but it was already too late. Camila arrived with no vital signs. The autopsy revealed the horror she had endured. 39 stab wounds covered her body. The pain for her family was only made worse when her Aunt Giovanna shared one more detail. The day Camila was murdered was also her mother, Salam's birthday. What should have been a celebration became the darkest day of her life. In the aftermath, Camila's classmates came under heavy criticism online. People accused them of doing nothing, of standing by and recording instead of saving her. Some called them hypocrites for crying afterwards, arguing they were no better than Edwin, but Giovanna defended them. She said they were probably paralyzed with fear, and who could blame them? They knew his history. They knew how violent he could be. And in that moment, facing a large man armed with a knife, getting closer might have meant another life lost. Camila's aunt wasn't the only one speaking out. She also made a point to defend the classmates, saying there really wasn't much more they could have done. And honestly, she had a point. How many of us truly know how we'd react if a man twice our size was standing in front of us with a knife, attacking someone with that kind of rage? People froze and people were terrified. It's easy to criticize when you're not the one in that classroom. But the backlash didn't stop there. The school itself quickly came under fire. Critics argued that the moment Edwin punched a teacher, he should have been expelled immediately. Removing him from campus could have prevented all of this. And beyond that, people questioned why someone with such a clear history of aggression was even allowed into the education program in the first place. How could a man with those warning signs be on a path to becoming a teacher, responsible for children? Where was the psychological screening? Where was the accountability? Online, questions kept piling up. Why was there no security on site to intervene? Why didn't the teachers do more? Everyone seemed to be pointing fingers, but in the end, the truth remained the same. Edwin attacked Camila with such relentless violence that nothing anyone did was enough to stop him. No matter how many what-ifs were raised afterward, the horror had already unfolded. Camila's body was brought back to her hometown, and that's where the reality of this tragedy hit hardest. Family, friends, and neighbors gathered to say goodbye. A white coffin covered with flowers, tears falling as people tried to process how her life had been stolen. Her classmates stood there in grief and anger. They couldn't understand why this had happened at all. Edwin had been obsessed with her, but Camila never encouraged him. She never even spoke to him. She kept her distance, and yet that distance was enough to drive him into obsession and ultimately to murder. All they wanted now was justice. They wanted him sentenced to the maximum, 30 years behind bars. Her sister also spoke through heartbreak. She said, "She didn't die. Her life was taken from her. She went to class and ended up lifeless. My heart hurts like never before." Her voice still whispers in my ears. Camila. She shared memories of growing up together, the small arguments, the laughter, and the dreams her sister had for her future. And then there was Camila's mother, Salem, who shared one of those dreams. Camila had been excited to bring a new method into her classrooms after graduation. It was called the flipped classroom. Instead of spending the whole day with a teacher lecturing at the front, students would study the material at home through videos, books, or slides. Then, when they arrived at school, class time would be all about working together, sharing what they learned, and solving problems as a team, with the teacher guiding them. It was innovative, collaborative, and it was something she believed could help children learn better while also involving their families in the process. That was the kind of teacher Camila wanted to be. But she never got that chance. Camila believed in her future as a teacher. She was excited to one day bring that flipped classroom method into her work because she thought it would change the way students learned. She just wanted to help kids grow. But Edwin took away every single dream, every plan, and every goal she had. Almost immediately after the murder, stories began spreading online and in the media that painted a completely false picture. Headlines claimed Camila and Edwin were in a relationship, that they had just broken up, and that the killing happened after a heated argument. But her classmates and her family fought back against that narrative. One friend made it clear that Camila never dated him. They were never a couple, and she never had feelings for him. He was obsessed with her, but she kept her distance. The classmate even said, "She has never been in a relationship with that person, the aggressor. She was never his partner or his girlfriend. They never spent time together. And I don't understand why people are saying that on social media. Please, I ask that this be clarified and come to light. She was a good person. And I also ask those listening to consider the grieving family. She is a mother. She has a 5-year-old son, and her mother is deeply hurt. Please." That same friend asked for justice, saying Edwin deserved the maximum punishment, 30 years in prison. And honestly, it mattered that they spoke out. Because when the story first broke, the online narrative was brutal. People were calling Edwin a heartbroken ex-boyfriend who snapped after rejection. But the truth, the real truth, was that Camila wanted nothing to do with him. The school later held a special mass in her honor. Friends, family, and classmates filled the room. The university released a statement afterwards saying, "Today a heartfelt mass was held in memory of our dear companion, Camila. In this moment of reflection and unity, we remember her warmth, dedication, and the light she brought into our lives. Although her absence leaves a deep void, her legacy and spirit will forever live on in our hearts. Her memory will inspire us to move forward." Meanwhile, Edwin was already in custody. The day of the attack, he had stabbed himself in the leg. As police escorted him into the Special Force building in Caranavi, reporters swarmed. One of them asked him why he did it. His answer was a single word: revenge. Later, he told investigators that Camila had ruined his life. After that, he stayed silent and demanded the fast-track option of an abbreviated criminal procedure. The evidence laid out in court was overwhelming. Witness testimony from her classmates, the autopsy, crime scene reports, the 2 knives found in his backpack, and even a video recorded by one of the students. Now I want to pause here. That video exists, but I won't be showing it or describing it in detail. Camila's family has made it clear they see its circulation online as a deep violation of her dignity. It was used as evidence in court, but outside of that, no one should be watching it. If anyone sees it shared, the family has asked people to report it immediately. With all the evidence presented, Edwin was sentenced to the maximum, 30 years behind bars, no parole. Eduardo del Castillo, Bolivia's Minister of Government, spoke after the sentencing. He said, "Edwin Marcos Kaiwanka, only 24 years old, had no criminal record. However, he will be sentenced to 30 years in prison. This violence has not been seen in previous administrations. He used a sharp weapon. causing 39 wounds against the humanity of a young Bolivian woman who, unfortunately, as a result of this brutal and merciless attack, lost her life. Today, Camila Picassi is not with us. However, we are going to do everything possible to ensure that Edwin receives the exemplary sanction of 30 years without the right to parole. Camila's murder became another entry in a devastating list. By October of 2024 alone, Bolivia had already recorded 73 femicides. And even though there are laws on the books to protect women, the reality is that violence against women is still happening every single day, with many cases ignored or mishandled. Camila's death was supposed to be the exception, the case that made people stop and say, "Never again." But in Bolivia, it was just one more in a growing number of tragedies. By October of 2024, there were already more than 37,000 reports of gender-based violence in Bolivia. By the end of the year, that number had climbed past 50,000. It shows just how unsafe the country has become for women and girls. In response, President Luis Arce spoke out. He condemned not just the violence itself, but also the justice system's failure to protect victims. He called for stronger measures, including electronic monitoring devices like ankle or wrist bracelets for men accused of violence. The idea is simple: keep them away from their victims and give women one more layer of safety. Whether those measures will actually be put in place is something we'll have to wait and see. What's devastating is that Camila's case isn't an isolated one. It's part of a heartbreaking pattern of femicides that keep happening again and again. Her life, like so many others, was cut short far too soon. My heart goes out to her family. I can only hope her son grows up surrounded by love, never forgetting the warmth of his mother, even if his memories of her will always be limited. I'll be honest, I wish I had never come across that video online. Seeing Edwin in that state, like he was possessed or completely disconnected from reality while attacking Camila, is something I'll never forget. It's haunting. And the fact that he had punched a teacher before and still wasn't expelled, that he was allowed to stay in class with her even after she complained about his obsession and harassment, it just makes everything so much worse. She was forced to sit near the very person who would end her life. That's why I wanted to tell Camila's story, not only to set the record straight about what really happened, that she was not his girlfriend, she never dated him, and she never had any romantic relationship with him, but also to remind us of the dangers of harassment. Harassment is never harmless. It escalates. It destroys lives. If you or someone you know is experiencing stalking, violence, or abuse, please use the resources linked below. Report it. Reach out. Because waiting can cost lives. Camila was only 23. She was bright, dedicated, and just getting started in life. She should be here today, finishing her degree, teaching, building a future with her son. Instead, we are left with the memory of who she was and the responsibility to make sure her story doesn't disappear into another statistic. So, if this story touched you, if Camila's memory deserves to be carried further than this video, then let it live on through you. Share it. Talk about it. Make sure people know what happened to her. That way, her voice and her light don't end here. They keep moving forward through all of us. Thank you for listening to Camila's story. May she rest peacefully, and may her family one day find healing.